The wind cut through Jake Mitchell's thermal suit like broken glass. He had been on the ice planet Viren 4 for 8 months now, and he still was not used to the cold. The research outpost where he worked sat on the edge of a frozen wasteland that stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction. Most days, Jake studied weather patterns and took samples from the ice. It was not exciting work, but someone had to do it. Today felt different. The blizzard had hit 3 days ago without warning. It was the worst storm Jake had seen since arriving on this frozen world. The winds had reached speeds that made it impossible to leave the outpost. Now that the storm had passed, Jake needed to check the equipment stations scattered across the ice fields. Several of them had stopped sending data during the blizzard. Jake walked carefully across the frozen ground. His boots crunched on the ice with each step. The sky above was a pale gray color, and the sun looked like a dim coin hanging in the distance. He checked his scanner and frowned. One of the biological sensors was showing strange readings about 2 miles from his current position. The readings did not make sense. They showed heat signatures in an area that should have been completely frozen. He changed direction and headed toward the anomaly. The walk took him 40 minutes. His legs ached from pushing through the deep snow. When he reached the top of a small ridge, Jake stopped. What he saw made his blood run cold, and it had nothing to do with the temperature. 6 small bodies lay scattered across the ice below. They were dragons, or rather, they were Virathi hatchlings. Jake had seen adult Virathi before. The dragon-like aliens had made contact with humanity 3 months ago. They were peaceful creatures who lived in family groups called packs. These hatchlings were each about the size of a large dog. Their scales were a light blue color, almost white. Ice crystals covered their bodies. They were not moving. Jake's hand went to his radio. "Base. This is Mitchell. I have a situation out here." The voice of Commander Lisa Grant came through with some static. "What kind of situation, Mitchell?" "I found 6 Virathi hatchlings. They appear to be dead. Frozen." There was a long pause. "Stay where you are. Do not approach. Do not touch anything. That is an order." "Understood," Jake said, but he did not move away. He could not stop looking at the small bodies on the ice. That was when he heard the sound. It was like singing, but deeper and more sorrowful than any human voice could make. Jake looked up and saw them. Adult Virathi circled in the sky above the dead hatchlings. There were at least a dozen of them. Their wings spread wide as they glided on the cold air currents. The sound they made sent chills down Jake's spine that had nothing to do with the weather. Jake had read the first contact reports. The Virathi were intelligent and emotional creatures. They formed strong family bonds. They cared for their young with fierce dedication. Seeing them circle above their dead children made Jake's chest feel tight. One of the dragons descended and landed near the bodies. She was larger than the others, with darker scales that looked almost purple in the pale light. She moved from one small body to another, nudging each one gently with her snout. When none of them moved, she lifted her head and made a sound that Jake would remember for the rest of his life. It was a cry of pure grief. Another dragon landed beside her. This one was even bigger, with scars across his face and wings. He touched the female dragon with his wing in what looked like a gesture of comfort. Together, they stood guard over the dead hatchlings. Jake felt something break inside him. He knew that pose. He knew that kind of grief. 7 years ago, his younger sister had died in an avalanche during a family trip to the mountains. Jake had been the one to find her body. He remembered standing in the snow, feeling helpless and angry and broken all at once. He saw that same pain in these dragons now. "Mitchell, are you still there?" Commander Grant's voice crackled through the radio. "Yes, Commander. A team is being assembled. They will be out there in 1 hour. Do not approach the Virathi. We do not know their mourning customs. We could cause an incident." "What if they need help?" Jake asked. "They do not want our help right now. They want to be left alone with their dead. Respect that." Jake knew she was probably right. First contact protocols existed for good reasons. Humans had only just started building relationships with the Virathi. One wrong move could damage everything, but Jake could not shake the feeling that doing nothing was the wrong choice. He watched the dragons for another 30 minutes. More of them landed around the bodies. They formed a circle, their wings touching. The sound they made together was like a funeral song. Jake's translator device tried to process their language, but could only give him fragments. Words like lost, darkness, and cold appeared on his screen. Jake studied the scene more carefully. Something felt wrong. The hatchlings were too far from any known Virathi nesting sites. What were they doing out here during a blizzard? Young Virathi were supposed to stay in their dens during storms. Adult dragons would never let their children wander into danger. He pulled out his scanner and ran a more detailed analysis. The readings made him pause. The hatchlings had died before they froze. Their body temperatures had dropped. But not from exposure to cold. Something else had killed them first. The ice storm had just preserved their bodies. "Commander Grant," Jake said into his radio. "I need to report something. These hatchlings did not freeze to death. They died before the storm hit." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Are you certain?" "The scanner readings are clear. Something killed them, and then the blizzard came." "What are you suggesting, Mitchell?" Jake looked at the grieving dragons. He thought about his sister. He thought about justice and truth and doing what was right even when it was hard. "I am suggesting this was not an accident, Commander. Someone killed these hatchlings." The radio was silent for a long moment. "Get back to base. Now. We need to discuss this." Jake took one last look at the scene below. The large female dragon, the one who had cried out in grief, turned her head and looked directly at him. Their eyes met across the distance. Jake did not know much about Virathi expressions, but he saw something in her gaze. It was a question, maybe even a plea. He made a decision in that moment. Protocol or no protocol, he was going to find out what happened to these hatchlings. He was going to give these dragons the one thing they needed most. Answers. Jake turned and started the long walk back to base. Behind him, the death song of the Virathi pack continued to echo across the frozen wasteland. The sound followed him all the way home, and he knew it would haunt his dreams that night. When he reached the outpost, Commander Grant was waiting for him in the airlock. Her expression was hard to read. "We need to talk, Mitchell. And you are not going to like what I have to say." Jake nodded. He probably was not going to like it, but he was going to do what needed to be done anyway. Some things were more important than following orders. Finding justice for dead children was one of them. Commander Lisa Grant stood with her arms crossed in her office. Jake sat in the chair across from her desk, still wearing his thermal suit. The ice from outside had melted and left small puddles on the floor around his boots. "You want to investigate a potential murder," Grant said. It was not a question. "You want to go back out there and interact with grieving aliens during what might be the most sensitive moment in human-Virathi relations." "Yes, Commander," Jake said simply. "Are you out of your mind?" "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But those hatchlings did not die by accident. Someone killed them. The dragons deserve to know who and why." Grant sat down heavily in her chair. She rubbed her temples like she had a headache. "Mitchell, I understand you feel strongly about this. But we have protocols for a reason. The Virathi need space to grieve. If we interfere now, we could destroy months of diplomatic progress." "What if it was your children?" Jake asked quietly. Grant's eyes snapped up to meet his. "That is not fair." "It is a fair question. If someone killed your children and then told you to just accept it and move on, what would you do?" Before Grant could answer, the office door opened. Kyle Torres walked in without knocking. The security officer looked angry. "Commander, I need to speak with you about Mitchell." "What now?" Grant asked with a sigh. "He has been loading supplies into a sled. Cold weather gear, translation equipment, scanning devices. He is planning to go back out there against orders." Jake did not try to deny it. "I was going to tell you, Commander, but I knew you would try to stop me." Kyle's face turned red. "Try to stop you? I will throw you in the brig if I have to. You cannot just ignore first contact protocols. Because you have a feeling." "It is not a feeling," Jake said, his voice harder now. "The scanner data is clear. Those hatchlings were poisoned. Someone murdered them. If we do nothing, Whoever did this will get away with it. And worse, the Virathi might never trust humans again if they find out we knew and did nothing. That is a lot of assumptions, Grant said. Jake stood up. Let me go talk to them. Let me offer to help. If they tell me to leave, I will leave, but I have to try. Kyle stepped between Jake and the door. You are not going anywhere. Kyle stepped between Jake. Jake looked at the security officer. Kyle was bigger and stronger, and he was armed. Jake was neither of those things, but Jake had spent the last 8 months on this frozen planet studying weather patterns and walking through blizzards. He had learned how to be persistent. Move, Kyle. No. Grant held up a hand. Both of you, calm down. She looked at Jake for a long moment. Why does this matter so much to you, Mitchell? And do not give me something about justice or doing the right thing. Tell me the real reason. Jake was quiet for several seconds. Then he spoke, and his voice was softer than before. 7 years ago, my sister died in an avalanche. She was only 16. I found her body in the snow. He paused. I spent months after that trying to understand what happened. I needed to know every detail. Where she was when it hit. How long she survived. If she suffered. He looked directly at Commander Grant. Everyone told me to let it go. They said knowing the details would not bring her back. But they were wrong. Knowing helped. Understanding helped. It did not make the pain go away, but it made it bearable. Jake gestured toward the window, toward the frozen wasteland beyond. Those dragons out there are feeling what I felt. And if I can give them answers, if I can help them understand what happened to their children, then maybe their pain will be bearable too. The office was silent. Kyle's expression had softened slightly. Grant leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. If you get yourself killed out there, I am going to be very angry with you, Grant finally said. Is that permission, Commander? That is me looking the other way for the next 12 hours. If the Virathi attack you, we might not be able to mount a rescue in time. If you cause a diplomatic incident, I will deny that I knew anything about your plans. Understood? Jake felt a surge of relief. Understood. Thank you, Commander. Do not thank me yet. Kyle, go with him. Both men turned to stare at her. What? They said at the same time. If Mitchell is going to do something this stupid, he needs backup. Kyle, you will stay at a distance and only intervene if his life is in danger. Consider it punishment for barging into my office without knocking. Kyle looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew better. Yes, Commander. 2 hours later, Jake stood at the edge of the ice field. The sled behind him was loaded with equipment. Kyle stood 20 feet away, watching him with a disapproving expression. Last chance to turn back, Kyle said. Not going to happen. You are going to get us both killed. Probably not. The Virathi are not violent. Not violent under normal circumstances, Kyle corrected. But these are not normal circumstances. They just lost their children. Grief makes people do crazy things. I am guessing it makes dragons do crazy things too. Jake could not argue with that logic. He picked up the rope attached to the sled and started walking. The dragons were still out there. He could see them in the distance. Dark shapes against the white ice. They had not moved since that morning. As Jake got closer, he could hear their songs again. The sound made his chest ache. He stopped about 50 yards from the circle of dragons. This was close enough that they would know he was there, but far enough that he would not seem like a threat. The large female dragon he had seen earlier raised her head. She looked at him with eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire. Several other dragons turned to face him as well. Their body language changed. They were no longer focused on their grief. Now they were focused on the human who had dared to approach them. Jake raised his hand slowly. He hoped the gesture would be understood as peaceful. Then he reached for his translation device and spoke clearly. I am sorry for your loss. I know that I am an outsider. I know that you did not ask for my presence. But I want to help. I want to find out what happened to your children. The translator processed his words and broadcast them in the Virathi language. Jake waited. His heart beat fast in his chest. Behind him, He heard Kyle mutter something that was probably a prayer. The large female dragon stood up. She was even bigger than Jake had realized. Her wings spread slightly, and Jake could see the power in her body. She could kill him with one swipe of her claws. He forced himself to stand still. The dragon took a step toward him. Then another. She moved with grace despite her size. When she was only 10 feet away, she stopped. She tilted her head and studied Jake like he was a puzzle she could not solve. Then she spoke. The translator caught her words and turned them into English. Why would a human care about Vyrathi hatchlings? Why? Jake took a deep breath. Because I know what it is like to lose someone. Because your pain matters. Because what happened here is wrong. And wrong things should not go unanswered. Another dragon moved forward. This was the big male with scars, the one Jake had seen earlier. He was even more intimidating up close. You are brave or foolish to come here, human. We do not know which. Maybe both, Jake admitted. A sound came from several of the dragons that Jake thought might be laughter. The big male studied him for a moment longer. Then he spoke again. I am Kovan. This is Thyra, my mate and leader of our pack. The hatchlings were ours. Our children. Jake felt the weight of those words. My name is Jake Mitchell. I am a scientist. I study this world and the life on it. He paused. I believe your children were murdered. The dragons reacted immediately. Wings flared. Growls rumbled through the air. Thyra stepped even closer to Jake, and her eyes blazed with sudden fury. How do you know this? I have equipment that can scan bodies. It can tell me how they died. Your hatchlings did not freeze to death. Something else killed them before the storm came. Kovan and Thyra looked at each other. They had a silent conversation that Jake could not understand. Finally, Thyra turned back to him. Can your equipment tell us what killed them? Maybe, but I would need to examine them more closely. I would need your permission. Why should we trust you? Another dragon asked. This one was younger, with brighter scales. Humans are new to this world. You know nothing of Vyrathi ways. That is true, Jake said. But I am offering to try. I am offering to help you find the truth. You can say no. You can tell me to leave. But if you let me help, I promise I will do everything in my power to find out what happened. Thyra stared at him for what felt like forever. Then she stepped aside. You may examine them, Jake Mitchell. But know this, if you are lying to us, if this is some human trick, there will be no place in this galaxy where you can hide from our vengeance. I understand, Jake said. He meant it. He walked forward slowly. The circle of dragons parted to let him through. Kyle stayed where he was, looking nervous. Jake knelt beside the first small body. Up close, the hatchling looked even younger than he had thought. Its eyes were closed. It looked like it was sleeping. Jake pulled out his scanner and began a detailed analysis. The other dragons watched him in silence. He worked carefully, treating each small body with respect. After an hour, he had his answer. He stood up and turned to face Thyra. They were poisoned. A rare toxin that is found in some plants on this world. But the poison was concentrated. Someone had to prepare it deliberately. This was not an accident. The sound that came from the dragons was like thunder. Rage and grief mixed together in a noise that shook the air. Thyra's voice rose above the others. Who would do this? Who would harm defenseless hatchlings? I do not know yet, Jake said. But I am going to find out. I promise you that. Jake sat in the medical lab, while Dr. Amy Chen examined the tissue samples he had collected. The small vials contained fragments that Jake had carefully removed from the hatchling bodies. Amy worked in silence, her eyes focused on the screen in front of her. Jake tried to be patient, but it was hard. This is bad, Amy finally said. She turned her screen so Jake could see. The toxin in these samples is called frost venom. It comes from a plant that grows in the deep ice caves on Virn 4. But here is the problem. The plant is extremely rare, and the poison has to be extracted and concentrated. This was not some accident where the hatchlings ate the wrong thing. Someone made this poison deliberately. How hard is it to make? Jake asked. You would need to know what you were doing. The extraction process is complex. You would also need access to the caves where the plants grow. Those caves are deep underground and dangerous. Jake thought about this. Who would have that knowledge? Amy shrugged. Could be anyone with advanced biological training. Some Virathi might know about it from their own medicine. Or it could be someone from off-world who studied the local flora. What about humans? Could someone from the outpost have made it? Amy gave him a sharp look. Are you suggesting one of us poisoned those hatchlings? I am not suggesting anything yet. I am just trying to understand all the possibilities. Before Amy could respond, the lab door opened. Commander Grant walked in, and she did not look happy. Mitchell, we have a problem. A big one. What kind of problem? The kind where you might have just started an interstellar incident. The Virathi have been on the communication channels non-stop for the past hour. They are demanding answers. More than that, they are demanding justice. Jake stood up. That is fair. Someone murdered their children. I agree, Grant said. But the situation is more complicated than you think. Come with me. Both of you. They followed Grant to the communications room. A large screen on the wall showed a Virathi dragon. This one was different from Thyra and Kovan. His scales were darker, almost black. And he had multiple scars across his face. He looked old and angry. That is Saldrak, Grant explained quietly. He is the leader of another Virathi pack that lives about 50 miles from here. His pack and Thyra's pack have been having territorial disputes for months. Saldrak's voice came through the translator. Humans have no right to interfere in Virathi matters. This is between our packs. The death of Thyra's hatchlings is tragic, but it is not your concern, Grant spoke carefully. We are not taking sides, Saldrak. We are simply trying to help find the truth about what happened. The truth is obvious, Saldrak growled. The hatchlings wandered too far during the storm and died. It is sad, but it happens. Thyra wants someone to blame for her grief. She should not drag humans into our affairs. Jake could not stay quiet. The hatchlings did not die from the storm. They were poisoned. Deliberately. Saldrak's eyes narrowed. Poisoned? That is a serious accusation, human. Do you have proof? Yes. Medical analysis confirmed it. Then perhaps you should look closer to home for your culprit, Saldrak said. Humans arrived on this world only months ago. You know nothing of our ways or our plants. Perhaps one of your own people caused this, and now tries to blame Virathi. The screen went dark. Saldrak had ended the call. Grant turned to Jake. Well, that went well. He is defensive, Jake said. Maybe too defensive. What do you mean? Think about it, Commander. If his pack had nothing to do with this, why would he care so much about us investigating? He should want the truth just as much as Thyra does. Amy spoke up from behind them. Jake has a point. Saldrak's reaction was strange. He seemed more concerned about stopping the investigation than finding out what really happened. Grant sat down at one of the terminals. I need to make some calls. If we are going to investigate this properly, we need more resources. And we need to be very careful. If either Virathi pack thinks we are taking sides, things could get very bad very fast. Jake left the communications room and headed for the equipment bay. He needed to think. The pieces of this puzzle were not fitting together yet. Someone had deliberately poisoned the hatchlings. But who? And why? He found Kyle in the bay, checking weapons. The security officer looked up when Jake entered. Heard you made a new friend. Saldrak sounds like a pleasant guy. He is hiding something, Jake said. Maybe. Or maybe he is just angry that Thyra is using human help. Some aliens are not happy about humans being on their worlds. Can't say I blame them. Do you think Saldrak's pack could have killed those hatchlings? Kyle set down the weapon he was holding. In Virathi culture, killing hatchlings is the worst crime possible. It is like killing babies. Even in territorial disputes, The young are supposed to be protected. If Saldrak or his pack broke that rule, the other Virathi packs across this planet would turn against him. Unless he could make it look like an accident, Jake said slowly. Or unless he could blame it on someone else. Like humans? Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. That would be a good way to drive both Thyra's pack and humans off this territory. If we looked like the killers, the Virathi would want us gone. If Thyra's pack was too grief-stricken or busy seeking revenge to defend their lands, Saldrak could move in. That is a dark theory, Kyle said. Got a better one? Before Kyle could answer, an alarm sounded. Red lights flashed in the equipment bay. Grant's voice came over the intercom. All personnel, we have incoming. A human ship just entered orbit, and they are not responding to hails. Jake and Kyle ran toward the command center. When they got there, Grant was already at her post. The main screen showed a small cargo ship in orbit above them. It was old and worn, the kind of ship that independent traders used. Who is it? Jake asked. Transponder identifies it as the Lucky Strike, registered to a trader named Victor Kane. He has been here before, bringing supplies and trading with both human and Virathi settlements, but he left 3 weeks ago. No one expected him back so soon. Can you reach him? Not yet. He is jamming our communications. Grant looked worried. Why would a trader jam our signals? Jake had a bad feeling about this. Amy, can you check something for me? Can you find out if Victor Kane ever requested information about local plants or biological samples? Amy pulled up her records. After a moment, her face went pale. Yes. 6 weeks ago, Kane requested detailed information about frost venom plants. He said he was interested in their potential medical applications. Everyone in the command center turned to look at each other. Kyle was the first to speak. Are we saying that a human trader poisoned those hatchlings? I am saying we need to talk to Victor Kane right now, Grant said. She tried the communications again. This time, a man's face appeared on screen. Victor Kane looked exactly like what Jake expected. He was middle-aged with hard eyes and a smile that did not reach those eyes. Commander Grant. Nice to see you again. Kane, why are you jamming our communications? Just being careful. I heard there was some trouble down there. Dead dragon babies. Investigations. Accusations flying around. Thought it might be best to stay out of the way for a while. That is interesting timing, Jake said, stepping into view of the camera. You left right before those hatchlings died. Now you show up right when we start asking questions about who poisoned them. Kane's smile faded. I do not know what you are talking about. I think you do. I think you poisoned those hatchlings. I think you wanted to start a conflict between Thyra's pack and Saldrak's pack. With both packs fighting each other or too weak to defend their territory, you could move in and take what you wanted. That is a serious accusation. You have any proof? You requested information about frost venom plants. That is the poison that killed the hatchlings. How many people on this planet would know how to extract and concentrate that toxin? Kane was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. You think you are smart, scientist, but you are missing something. Even if I did poison those little dragons, you cannot prove it, and you cannot catch me. I am up here, and you are down there. I can jump to faster than light speed whenever I want. Why did you do it? Jake asked. Why kill innocent children? Because there are mineral deposits under Thyra's territory worth millions. Saldrak knew about them too. He was willing to make a deal with me. I would help remove Thyra's pack, and we would split the profits. But Saldrak got cold feet at the last minute. Said he would not harm hatchlings even for riches. So I did it myself. You are confessing? Grant asked in disbelief. Why not? You cannot touch me, and in a few minutes, I will be gone. This planet will be in chaos, and by the time anyone figures out what really happened, I will be spending my money on a nice beach somewhere far away. Kane's smile returned. Thanks for the investigation, by the way. You did all the hard work for me. Now everyone knows the hatchlings were murdered. Saldrak will get blamed. Thyra's pack will go to war. and humans will probably be kicked off this planet for interfering. Perfect outcome. The screen went dark. Kane had ended the transmission. Grant immediately tried to contact him again, but there was no response. Can we stop him from leaving orbit? Jake asked. With what? Grant said. We are a research outpost, not a military base. We have no weapons that can reach a ship in orbit. Jake thought fast. Then he had an idea. Do we have any small ships? Fast ones? We have a pilot named Ryan Blake, who flies a scout ship, but he cannot stop a cargo vessel. He does not have to stop it, he just has to slow it down. Grant looked at Jake like he was crazy. And how is Ryan supposed to do that? Jake smiled grimly. By being human. By being persistent and refusing to give up. Get Ryan ready to fly. And someone get Thyra on communications. She needs to hear about this. Ryan Blake ran through the pre-flight checks faster than Jake had ever seen anyone work. The scout ship hummed to life in the hangar bay. Ryan was a thin man with quick hands and sharp eyes. He had been flying ships since he was 16 years old. And it showed in every movement he made. This is a bad plan, Ryan said as Jake climbed into the co-pilot seat. Kane has a bigger ship, better weapons, and a head start. We are going to get ourselves killed. Maybe, Jake admitted, but we have to try. Because of the dead dragons? Because it is the right thing to do. Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. The right thing to do usually gets people killed. But sure, let us go chase down a murderer in space. What could possibly go wrong? The scout ship launched into the cold sky of Virn 4. Within minutes, they had left the atmosphere and entered orbit. Jake could see Kane's ship ahead of them. The Lucky Strike was moving slowly, preparing to jump to faster than light speed. We are never going to catch him before he jumps, Ryan said. Jake was already working on the communication systems. We do not have to catch him. We just have to keep him here long enough for help to arrive. What help? Commander Grant said. We have no weapons. We do not need weapons. We have something better. We have Thyra. On the planet below. Thyra's voice came through the communication system. She had been listening to everything that happened in the command center. Now she spoke with cold fury. The human confessed to killing my children? Yes, Jake said. Victor Kane admitted it. He wanted to start a war between your pack and Saldrak's pack. He planned to profit from your grief. The sound that came from Thyra was like nothing Jake had heard before. It was rage given voice. Pure and terrible. Where is this human now? In orbit above the planet. He is trying to escape. Can your ship stop him? We are trying. But we need help. Can Virithi fly in space? There was a pause. Then Thyra spoke again. Not like humans can. We cannot breathe in the void. But we can reach low orbit for short periods if we must. How high is this killer? Ryan checked his instruments. About 200 kilometers up. That is pretty high. We can reach that height, Thyra said. Gather the pack. We fly in 10 minutes. Jake felt a surge of hope. Commander Grant, did you hear that? Grant's voice came through from the base. I heard. Mitchell, what are you planning? I am planning to slow Kane down until the dragons can reach him. Ryan, can you get in front of his ship? I can try. Hold on. The scout ship accelerated hard. Jake felt himself pushed back into his seat. Ryan was an excellent pilot. He guided the small craft through space with precision, cutting off angle after angle. Within 5 minutes, they were in front of the Lucky Strike. Kane's voice came through on the communication channel. Get out of my way, or I will blast you out of space. You do not want to do that, Jake said. If you kill humans, every government in the galaxy will hunt you. You will never be safe. Maybe. But you will still be dead. Last chance. Move. Move. Ryan looked at Jake. Well, Jake thought about his sister buried under snow. He thought about 6 small dragon bodies frozen on the ice. He thought about Thyra's grief and Kovan's rage and the sound of their funeral songs. Do not move. Kane fired a warning shot. The blast of energy passed close enough to their ship that alarms started blaring. Ryan's hands flew across the controls, keeping them steady. "He is serious," Ryan said. "Next shot will not be a warning." "I know. Keep blocking him." Below them, on the surface of Viren 4, something was happening. Jake could see it on his scanners. Dozens of heat signatures were rising from the planet. The Virathi were launching themselves into space. Kane saw it too. His voice came through again, but now he sounded worried. "What is that?" "That is justice," Jake said. "That is what happens when you kill children and think you can just fly away." The dragons rose into the thin air at the edge of space. They could not breathe here, and the cold was extreme, even for them. But they climbed anyway, driven by grief and rage and the need to protect their own. Thyra led them, her wings beating against the void. Kane panicked. His ship turned and began accelerating hard, trying to reach escape velocity before the dragons could get to him. Ryan moved to intercept again. But Kane was not playing anymore. His ship fired directly at the scout ship. "Hold on," Ryan shouted. He rolled the ship hard to the left. The blast caught their wing, and Jake heard metal tear. Alarms screamed. The scout ship tumbled out of control. Ryan fought with the controls. Slowly, painfully, he brought the ship back under control. But they were damaged badly. "We are out of this fight," Ryan said. "Life support is failing. We need to get back to the surface now." "Wait," Jake said. He was watching his scanner. "Look, the dragons had reached Kane's ship. They could not survive in space for long, but they did not need long." Thyra slammed into the Lucky Strike's hull with the force of a meteor. Other dragons followed. They tore at the ship's engines with their claws. They blasted the hull with fire from their mouths that somehow burned even in the vacuum of space. Kane's ship shuddered under the assault. His engines sputtered. He tried to activate his faster-than-light drive, but nothing happened. The dragons had damaged it too badly. "Got you," Jake whispered. But then something went wrong. One of the smaller dragons, a young female with bright blue scales, got too close to a venting engine. The blast knocked her away from the ship. She tumbled through space, clearly unconscious or worse. "No," Jake said. "Ryan, can we reach her?" Ryan checked their damaged systems. "Maybe. But if we do, we will not have enough power to get back to the surface safely. We will be stranded up here." Jake did not hesitate. "Do it." Ryan swore, but changed course. The scout ship limped through space toward the drifting dragon. Behind them, Thyra and the other dragons had forced Kane's ship into a decaying orbit. The Lucky Strike was going down whether Kane wanted it to or not. The scout ship caught up to the young dragon. She was not breathing. Her scales were covered in frost. "We need to get her inside," Jake said. "The cargo bay can be pressurized and heated, but it is small. I do not know if she will fit." "Make it fit." They opened the cargo bay doors and carefully maneuvered the dragon inside. It was a tight squeeze, but they managed. Jake sealed the doors and started the pressurization sequence. Heat flooded into the bay. The dragon did not move. Jake went into the bay himself, even though it meant leaving the safety of the cockpit. He knelt beside the young dragon and checked for signs of life. Her body was cold. Far too cold. Jake remembered training from years ago, CPR for humans. Would it work on a dragon? He did not know, but he had to try. He found the spot where he thought her heart should be and began compressions. He counted out loud, focusing on the rhythm. After 2 minutes, the dragon gasped. Her eyes opened. She looked confused and frightened. Jake stepped back, giving her space. "You are safe," he said gently. "You are going to be okay. Jake, you are going to be okay." The dragon tried to speak, but her voice was too weak. Jake activated his translator. "Rest. Do not try to talk. We are taking you home." Ryan's voice came from the cockpit. "Jake, we have a problem. Kane's ship is going down, but it is not landing safely. It is going to crash. And there is someone else on board with him." "What? Who?" I am picking up 2 life signs on that ship, Kane and someone smaller, maybe a child. Jake's blood ran cold. He took a hostage. One of the dragons must have been near his ship when he grabbed them. We have to help. How? We barely have power to land ourselves. Jake looked at the young dragon in the cargo bay. She was watching him with eyes that reminded him of Thyra's eyes. Intelligent, aware. She understood something was wrong. Get us to the crash site, Jake said. Wherever Kane lands, that is where we land. That is suicide. Then we die doing the right thing. Move, Ryan. The scout ship descended toward Viren 4. Below them, the Lucky Strike was burning through the atmosphere. It was heading for a region of ice canyons, far from the human outpost. The crash was going to be bad. Kane's ship hit the ground hard. It skidded across the ice for half a mile before slamming into a canyon wall. Smoke and fire poured from the wreckage. The scout ship landed nearby, its damaged systems barely functioning. Jake did not wait for anything to cool down. He grabbed emergency equipment and ran toward the crash site. Behind him, Ryan was shouting something, but Jake could not hear over the roar of blood in his ears. The Lucky Strike was a mess of twisted metal. Jake found the airlock and forced it open. Smoke poured out, and he had to cover his mouth. Inside, he found Kane unconscious and bleeding, and beside Kane, trapped under a fallen support beam, was a small dragon. She was even younger than the hatchlings who had died. Her scales were pale yellow, and she was crying. "It is okay," Jake said, even though he knew she probably could not understand him. "I am going to get you out." The support beam was too heavy for him to lift alone. Jake braced himself and pulled with all his strength. The beam moved an inch, then 2 inches. Jake's muscles screamed in protest. His vision started to blur, but he kept pulling. The beam shifted enough for the young dragon to crawl free. She ran to Jake and pressed against him, shaking with fear. Jake wrapped his arms around her, protecting her from the smoke and fire. Kane started to wake up. He saw Jake and the dragon. He reached for a weapon on his belt. Jake saw the movement and knew he should run, but he could not run with the young dragon. She was too frightened to move on her own. Jake did the only thing he could think of. He stood between Kane and the dragon. He spread his arms wide, making himself as big as possible. "You are not going to hurt anyone else," Jake said. Kane raised the weapon. His hand was shaking. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. "You should have stayed out of this, scientist. This was not your fight. Thanks for watching. You made it my fight when you killed those hatchlings. You made it every decent person's fight." "Decent?" Kane laughed bitterly. "Where has being decent ever gotten anyone? I was trying to make something of myself, trying to finally get ahead, and you ruined it. You ruined it yourself when you chose to murder children." Kane's finger tightened on the trigger. Jake closed his eyes and hoped that Ryan would take care of the young dragon after he was gone. He hoped Thyra would know that he tried. The shot never came. There was a roar and a blast of wind. Jake opened his eyes to see Thyra standing over Kane. She had pulled the weapon from his hand and crushed it like it was made of paper. Coven was beside her, and behind them were dozens of other dragons. The young dragon ran to her parents, crying out in relief. They nuzzled her gently, checking her for injuries. Then Thyra turned to face Jake. Her eyes were hard and bright. "You saved my daughter, Lissa. You risked your life for her." Jake was shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Thyra said, "not anyone. You are strange creatures, you humans. You are small and weak. You cannot fly. You cannot breathe fire. But you have something we did not expect. You have hearts that refuse to break, even when you should give up." She looked at Kane, who was cowering on the ground. "This one will face Virathi justice. He will wish you had let him die in the crash. He needs to face human justice too," Jake said, "for trying to start a war, for attempted murder of me and Ryan, for a lot of things." Thyra nodded slowly. "He will answer to both our peoples then. Let him be an example of what happens when someone harms the innocent. Jake felt his legs give out. He sat down hard on the ice. Everything hurt. He was pretty sure he had broken something when he pulled that support beam. But the young dragon was safe. That was all that mattered. Kovan approached Jake carefully. The big dragon lowered his head until he was eye level with Jake. You have proven yourself today, Jake Mitchell. You are worthy of respect. Coming from a dragon, that meant everything. 3 days after the crash, Jake woke up in the medical bay with a broken rib, a sprained shoulder, and more bruises than he could count. Doctor, Amy Chen stood over him with a disapproving look on her face. You are an idiot, she said by way of greeting. You could have been killed a dozen different ways. What were you thinking? I was thinking about 6 dead children who deserved justice, Jake said. His voice was rough from smoke inhalation. And 1 living child who deserved to be saved. Amy's expression softened. Well, you succeeded. Lissa is fine. She keeps asking about you, actually. The dragons have been camped outside the outpost for days, waiting for you to wake up. They are still here? Where else would they be? You are a hero to them now. You should see the messages that have been coming in from other Virathi packs across the planet. Everyone has heard. What you did. Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his ribs. What happened to Kane? He is in custody. Both human and Virathi authorities want to question him. Commander Grant is working out the details of how his trial will proceed. It is complicated when you have crimes that affect 2 different species. And Saldrak? Cleared of all suspicion. Turns out he was telling the truth about refusing to harm hatchlings. Kane tried to bribe him, but Saldrak wanted nothing to do with it. He actually sent a formal apology to Thyra's pack for ever discussing the plan with Kane, even though he never agreed to it. Jake nodded. That was good news at least. He looked at the window and saw that the sky was clear for once. Can I go outside? Can I go outside? Absolutely not. You need at least 3 more days of rest. Amy, please. I need to talk to them. She sighed. Fine. But you are taking a wheelchair, and if you pass out, I am going to say I told you so. 20 minutes later, Jake was wheeled outside into the cold air. The wheelchair was covered with thermal blankets, and he wore a heavy coat. Even so, the cold bit at his face. He did not mind. It felt good to be out of the medical bay. Thyra's pack was indeed camped near the outpost. They had built temporary shelters from ice, and were clearly planning to stay for a while. When they saw Jake, several of the dragons stood up and approached. Thyra led them, with Kovan close behind. You should be resting, Thyra said. Her translator device turned her words into English with a concern that matched her tone. I needed to see you, Jake said, to make sure you were okay. We should be asking you that question. You nearly died saving our daughter. She is a child. Children should be protected. Jake paused. I am sorry I could not save your other hatchlings. I am sorry I could not find the truth in time to stop what happened. Thyra was quiet for a moment, then she lowered her great head until it was close to Jake. You gave us something more valuable than revenge. You gave us answers. You gave us justice. You showed us that not all humans are like Victor Kane. Some of you care about what is right, even when it costs you everything. End quote. Kovan spoke up. In Virathi culture, there is a ceremony for those who save a hatchling's life. It is called the Flame Keeper ritual. The one who saves the child becomes bonded to the family. They are no longer an outsider. They are pack. I do not understand, Jake said. We wish to make you part of our pack, Jake Mitchell. Thyra explained. You would be family. Not human or Virathi, but something in between. A bridge between our peoples. Jake felt his throat tighten. I would be honored. The ceremony happened that evening as the sun set over the ice fields. The entire pack gathered in a circle around a fire that the dragons had created with their breath. Jake stood in the center, supported by Ryan and Kyle since he was still too injured to stand on his own. Thyra and Kovan approached him. They each placed a claw gently on his shoulders. Thyra spoke words in the Vairathi language that were ancient and powerful. The translator did not even try to convert them. Some things were meant to be felt, not understood. When the ceremony was complete, every dragon in the pack breathed a small flame toward Jake. The flames joined together and swirled around him but did not burn. They were warm and comforting, like a hug from the universe itself. "You are Flamekeeper now," Coven said. "Protector of hatchlings, friend to dragons, part of our family." Jake looked around at the faces watching him. Human and dragon alike. He thought about how far he had come from that day when he first found the frozen bodies. He thought about his sister and how she would have loved to see this. She had always believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard. "Thank you," Jake said, "for trusting me, for letting me help, for giving me a second family." The celebration continued into the night. Dragons and humans shared stories and food. Commander Grant had even approved the use of human supplies to help the dragons build more permanent shelters near the outpost. The two species were learning to live together, to understand each other. Late in the evening, Jake found himself sitting beside the fire with young Lissa. She was curled up next to him, her head resting on his shoulder. She had barely left his side since he came outside. "Why did you save me?" she asked. Her voice was small and young through the translator. "You did not know me. I am not even your species." Jake thought about how to answer. "Because you matter. All children matter. It does not matter what species they are or where they come from. Children are the future. They are hope, and hope should never be allowed to die if we can prevent it." The human Cain did not think that way. No, he did not. And that is what makes him different from most humans. Most of us care. Most of us want to do good. Cain was someone who forgot how to care about anything except money and power. Lissa was quiet for a moment. "I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to protect others." "Then you will be," Jake said. "You will be amazing." The next morning, Jake worked with Thyra and Coven to create a memorial for the 6 hatchlings who had died. They found a place on the ice field where the hatchlings had spent their last moments. Using human technology and dragon fire, they created a monument from ice and stone. The monument was beautiful. It showed 6 small dragons taking flight toward the stars. Around the base, they carved the names of each hatchling in both human and Vairathi languages. The ice would preserve it for centuries, a reminder of what had happened and why it must never happen again. "They would have liked this," Thyra said softly, as they stood back to admire the work. "They loved to imagine flying among the stars. Now they will," Jake said. "In memory, they will fly forever." Word of what happened on Virn 4 spread quickly through the galaxy. Other Vairathi packs heard about the human who had fought for justice for dragon hatchlings. They heard about Jake Mitchell, the Flamekeeper, who had risked everything to protect a child that was not his own species. One by one, other Vairathi packs across the galaxy reached out to humanity. They wanted to meet these strange creatures who valued life so much. They wanted to understand this species that chose compassion over profit. The Vairathi began calling humans the species who weeps with us. It was a title of respect. It meant that humans understood grief and loss. It meant they cared about more than just themselves. Commander Grant called Jake to her office 2 weeks after the incident. He was walking on his own now, though his ribs still ached when he moved too fast. Grant sat behind her desk with a strange expression on her face. "I have been thinking about what you did," she said, "about how you broke protocols and ignored orders and nearly got yourself killed multiple times." "Am I in trouble?" Jake asked. "You should be. You violated about 15 different regulations." Grant paused. "But you also saved lives. You prevented a war. You established one of the strongest human-alien alliances we have ever seen. So no, you are not in trouble. In fact, you are being promoted." Jake blinked in surprise. "Promoted? To Chief of Xenological Relations for this sector. Your job will be to continue building relationships with the Vairathi and any other species we encounter. Apparently, you are good at it." "I just did what felt right." "That is exactly why you are good at it." Most diplomats overthink things. They worry about protocols and procedures and making sure every word is perfect. You cut through all that and focus on what matters. You treat aliens like people, like they deserve respect and compassion. Jake thought about this. What if I make mistakes? What if I break more protocols? Grant smiled. Then I will cover for you. Within reason. Just try not to get yourself killed. I do not want to explain to Thyra how I let her flame keeper die from stupidity. That evening, Jake stood outside the outpost and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, the galaxy was changing. Humans and Virathi were learning to work together. Other species were watching to see what would happen. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of hope. Lissa appeared beside him. She was getting bigger every day, growing fast as young dragons did. What are you thinking about? She asked. I am thinking about my sister, about how she would have loved all of this. She always believed that people should help each other, no matter what. Tell me about her. So Jake did. He told Lissa about his sister, who loved mountains and snow. About how she would laugh at anything and make everyone around her smile. About how she died too young, before she could see all the amazing things she would have done. As he talked, other dragons joined them. Thyra and Kovan, Nexar and the other pack members. They listened quietly. And when Jake finished, Thyra spoke. Your sister sounds like she was brave. Like she would have been a good friend to dragons. She would have loved you all, Jake said. His voice was thick with emotion. She would have been so excited to meet you. Then we will honor her memory, Thyra declared. We will name the next hatchling born to our pack after her. This way, her spirit will continue. She will fly with us. Jake felt tears on his face, but he did not bother to wipe them away. Thank you. That means more than you know. The dragons moved closer, surrounding Jake with their warmth. They stood together under the alien stars. Two species that should have been strangers but had become family instead. They had been brought together by tragedy but bonded through compassion and the shared belief that all life was precious. Jake understood now what it meant to be Flamekeeper. It was not just about saving one child. It was about protecting hope itself. It was about refusing to let cruelty and greed win. It was about showing that even in the coldest, darkest places, warmth and light could still exist if people were willing to fight for it. As the night deepened and the stars grew brighter, Jake made a silent promise. To his sister. To the 6 hatchlings who had died. To Lissa, and all the other young lives that deserved protection. He would never stop fighting for what was right. He would never stop believing that compassion was stronger than hate. That was what it meant to be human. Not the technology or the weapons or the ability to travel between stars. It was the choice to care. The willingness to sacrifice. The refusal to give up on others. Even when it would be easier to walk away. Humanity's greatest strength was not in their ships or their science. It was in their hearts. And that strength would carry them to the stars and beyond, making allies and friends along the way. Because in the end, the measure of any species was not in what they could take, but in what they were willing to give. Jake Mitchell, the Flamekeeper, understood that now, and he would spend the rest of his life proving it to the galaxy.